Good morning. It is great to see you all. You can see I'm out and about in my car again. Now, one of the places that I like to go when I'm with my mum is we like to go to Stately Homes, National Trust properties. Some of you probably go to them too. And there was one we went to, and I'm a bit sketchy on the details and Google didn't help me out. There was one we went to, and the gardens had been set up to remind the owner, the person who retired there, of his time as a missionary. And now a missionary is someone who tells other people about God. Some people travel around the world. Anyone who tells someone about God is a missionary. So this missionary had travelled out to a very remote village to tell people about Jesus because they'd never heard about him. And if someone didn't go out there to tell them, they would never hear about him. When he got there, they weren't very nice to him. They didn't really welcome him. But then he got sick. He got something called malaria, which is a really nasty illness, and he ended up having to come back to England to recover. Once he was better, he wanted to go back to that village again because they still hadn't heard about Jesus yet. So he went again, and again they weren't very welcoming. We really don't want this guy here. Then, do you know what happened? He got malaria again and ended up having to come back to England again. Then he got better and he decided, I'm going to try again. He went out again. They rejected him again. He got malaria again. He came home. He got better. He went back out and they said, you know what? This guy has nearly died trying to get this message to us. We better listen. So he told them about Jesus and he changed their lives. Now, he was a good guy. He wanted to help people. He wanted to improve situations and he wanted to get people to know Jesus. But bad things happened to him. Now, where we're looking at things Jesus didn't say, he never said, if you're a good guy, good things are going to happen to you. He doesn't promise that at all. And if you look at some famous people in the Bible, there's Daniel. He wanted to keep praying to God even when it was made illegal because he knew God was the God, the one to pray for. And so although he did nothing but help the king and be a good person and prayed and didn't give up on God, he ended up being thrown into the lion's den. And we know that ended up okay and it was all fine. But it must have been awful at the time. Or Paul, the apostle, he was going around telling people about Jesus and about how Jesus can save your life and how Jesus is the best thing to ever happen. And he was in a shipwreck and he was arrested and he was beaten and he was arrested again and he was beaten again. And ultimately he died because of what he believed. He was a really good guy. He started out bad. He got good, but bad things happened to him. And then, of course, there is the ultimate good guy. Jesus never did a wrong thing in his life. He never sinned. He was never mean. He was only ever loving and wonderful. And he did incredible miracles. And he taught people what it was really all about and why God was so great. And he was just good. And we did the most horrendous thing to him on the cross. He was beaten and he was rejected and he was spat at and he was called names and he died for us. Even though he was the best person to ever live, something really bad happened to him. And again, we know it turned out well. He was resurrected. He came back to life. And he took all of our punishments with him, which was great, but it must still have been a horrible thing to go through. God is great and wonderful, and we've talked about this before, and I can't tell you enough just how fantastic he is. He can heal, he can restore, he can provide, he can talk to us, he can come alongside us, but the only thing he promises us is if we become friends with Jesus, we will have eternal life. He doesn't promise that we'll have an easy life here on earth. And sometimes people get a bit confused and they think, well, that's it. I've given my life to God. It's going to be plain sailing from here. God never promised that, but he did promise you eternal life. Being friends with Jesus will not stop bad things from happening, but it will guarantee us that we have someone with us the whole way through. On our darkest, scariest times, he is there with us. In our happiest and most exciting times, he's with us too. But when things are bad, when things are frightening, when things are scary. He is there with us. Sometimes we can't feel him, but I promise you, he is there. So how do we deal with it when things are going rough? If you look at Paul again, one of the times that he was in prison with a man called Silas, they sang songs, they praised God, they didn't let it get to them. Daniel prayed even though he knew he wasn't supposed to, even though they'd got that new law that he wasn't allowed to anymore. He kept praying. He didn't give up on God, and God certainly didn't give up on him. And Jesus, he knew exactly why he'd come to earth. He knew exactly what fate lay ahead for him. And number one, he still came, which is incredible. And number two, he went around loving people, helping people, caring for people, being kind to people, looking after people. He didn't stop doing God's work just because things got tough. Even when he was on the cross and things were horrible and painful and just the worst that you can imagine, even then, Jesus was still praying for us. And sometimes it's really hard when things are tough, when things are bad. It is very easy to want to run away. And if you look at the disciples when Jesus was crucified, most of them did. Peter denied even knowing Jesus. But because God's forgiveness and Jesus' forgiveness and love are limitless, it didn't stop them being useful. So if you've had a bad time and you've given up on something, don't worry about it. That doesn't have to be the end. Give it back to God. Say, here I am. I know sometimes it's going to be hard, but I'm yours. And I'm in it for the good and the bad. And just see what happens. It will be amazing. And one final thought. If bad things are happening to you, it is not because you're a bad person. It is not because you deserve it. It's because bad things happen. But God will see you through them. God will be with you. And ultimately, when the worst happens, you will get to be in eternity with him. And that's actually the best. So hang in there. It will be okay. See you later.